Hello, hello, hello. I am the Linux Mensch. Today I'm going to talk about Manjaro. Manjaro is a distribution that's based on Arch Linux. Now, there are people who would argue the case, and the reason why they argue the case is because Manjaro has its own repositories. So when you're using Manjaro, you're not downloading or updating directly from the Arch Linux repositories. What happens is that Manjaro has their own repositories, and they take the software applications and the updates, and they transport them from the Arch Linux repositories to their own repositories to hold them back for 2 weeks and test them, and then they release them to the public. So when you're downloading or updating from Manjaro, you're actually downloading and updating from their own repositories, even though if you're doing it in the terminal and you're typing in pacman, so you're still using pacman in the terminal, but it's coming directly from Manjaro. So some people like to say it's not truly based on Arch. I disagree. I do believe Manjaro is based on Arch, and Manjaro was the first Arch Linux-based distribution that I used before I switched over to pure Arch. I think it's a very good distribution, and I think it's a good distribution for someone who is not police skilled, or they just don't want to bother having to do things in the terminal or have difficulty with the distribution. I think it's a very good distribution for someone to use. So I'm going to go to the Manjaro website and just give you a brief tour. I'm going to do a download. I'm going to install it, and I'm going to give you a brief tour of the distribution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Firefox. I'm going to type in Manjaro. Go to it, and here we are. We're on the Manjaro website. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on up here in the top right. I'm going to click on download. And I'm not going to go to ARM. I'm going to click on x86. And these first three ones are the Manjaro official downloads. They have Plasma, XFCE, and GNOME. So those are the official ones. Then there's community ones down here. There's Budgie, Cinnamon, i3, Sway, Mate, and Manjaro Docker. Now the Cinnamon desktop was the Manjaro that I used to live in, and I lived in it from 3 to 6 months on 2 different computers. And the reason why is because Cinnamon is my favorite desktop environment when I'm not using a window manager. And when I was living in this goes back to the days before I knew what window managers were. But today, I'm going to download the GNOME desktop, and for 2 reasons. Number one, it's one of their official ISOs. And secondly, I just want to do something different besides the Cinnamon desktop or the Awesome Window Manager or Qtile Window Manager. And GNOME desktop is very nicely themed. Now, you can get the GNOME desktop in pure Arch or pure Debian or in other Linux distributions. You can also download the GNOME desktop environment, but the Manjaro team did a really nice job on the GNOME desktop environment. They added to it and themed it in their own special way, and I think it's nice, and that's the one I'm going to highlight today. So what I'm going to do is I already downloaded the ISO a couple of days ago, and it took less than 5 minutes to download it. I'm going to go through the process of installing a virtual machine in Virt-Manager, and then I'm going to install it. And while it's installing, that will probably take about 10 minutes. So I'll probably pause the video. And then I'm going to log into the distribution and give you a brief tour of it. Now, one other thing I want to say is that Manjaro is a rolling release. And they come out with a new ISO, I think every 2 to 3 months. And the reason why they do that, it's for people who are newly installing the system. They don't want you to have thousands of updates to do or hundreds of updates to do. So that's the reason why they come out with a new ISO quarterly. But if you already have it installed, you don't have to go and get a new ISO. You just have to do your updates. The same thing with Arch. Pure Arch Linux, they put an ISO out every month. But if you're doing, and it's only for new installs, if you already have it installed, you don't have to reinstall it. You just do your updates. So anyways, Manjaro put new ISOs out. I think it was around Christmas Eve. So I'm going to download this and give you a tour of it. So like I said, I already downloaded it. So I'm going to go and install it in a virtual machine. So I'm going to close Firefox and I'm going to open up Virt-Manager. And this time I'm going to go through the process of installing a virtual machine in Virt-Manager, even though I did a video on this in the past. So I'm just loading up my Virt-Manager and I'm going to hit this plus. Now these are the other VMs I have. I have, believe it or not, a virtual machine of Windows 11, Windows 10, LMDE5, Linux Mint 21.1, Pure Debian, and also Arch Linux. But I'm going to open up a new virtual machine. I'm going to hit forward. I'm going to browse inside my hard drive for the ISO from Manjaro, and I know where it is. So I'm going to hit this browse button here, and I'm in ISOs. And I'm going to click this one, Manjaro Gnome, and it was put out Christmas Eve. So I'm going to hit open down here in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm going to forward it. It's automatically giving it 4 gigs of RAM. It's giving it 2 CPUs. I'm going to give it 4. I'm going to forward it. Giving it 25 gig of hard drive. I'm going to change that to 40 gig hard drive. I'm going to forward it, and I'm going to finish. And now it's creating the virtual machine. And this is just going to take a second. I'm going to boot into it. So I'm booting into the live ISO. Let's just get rid of this. So just booting into the live ISO, it's going to take a moment. And once I'm in the live ISO, I'm not going to give you a brief tour. I'm going to go right into my installation. So we've logged into the live ISO and you get this welcome screen. I'm just going to shut it. And this button right here is the icon to install Manjaro. So I'm just going to install it. I'm not going to go through a tour right now. I'll install it and then I'll do a tour. So it's saying American English. Next. America has my city. I'm just going to change the keyboard to French Canada and English Canada. I'm going to hit next. Now it's saying it's going to erase the disk. It's a 40 gig hard drive. The default is no swap and ext4. So that's exactly what I want. If you want a swap file, you can turn on swap file. I don't use a swap file, so I always say no swap. That would be up to you. No swap, ext4, you can change that to these ones here, but I always go with ext4. So I'm going to hit next. It's asking me for my name. I'm just going to put my name in. It's asking me to name the computer. It threw in an automatic name because it's Virt-Manager and that's the way it works. I'm just going to put in the name of the computer is going to be Manjaro. Let's do it with a capital. Manjaro Gnome. Now it's asking me for my password. It's asking me to repeat my password. Now it's asking me, do you want to log in automatically without asking for a password? I'm going to leave that blank. Use the same password for the administrator account? Sure. I click it on, and I'm going to click next. It's asking me to take a look and verify everything looks good. I'm going to click on install. Install now? Yes. So it's installing it, and this is going to be probably a 10-minute process. So I'm going to pause the video and come back and give you a brief tour of the brand new ISO from Manjaro with the GNOME desktop environment. So I will be back. So I'm back. That took about 10 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this restart now and click on done. And it's going to reboot into the system. So it's rebooted into the system. So I'm going to click on my name, Mensch. Brings up the password field. I'm going to type in my password. I'm going to hit enter. So I'm just going to say, it's asking me if I want to take a tour. I'm going to say no thanks. And there's the welcome screen, and there's lots of valuable information you can read on there if you would like. This button is automatically clicked on to launch at start. I'm going to turn that off, so the next time I boot into the system, I don't get this welcome menu. Then I'm going to shut it. So this is the brand new Manjaro. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, and you only have to do this once, is I'm going to click on this application menu, and I'm going to type in display. And I'm going to hit enter. And you only have to do this because it's a virtual machine. If you installed this on bare metal, you won't have to do this. And if you're doing it in a virtual machine, you only have to do it once. So I'm going to change the display to, I don't know if I should do 19. Let's do 1360 by 768. Apply it. A lot of people do 1920 by 1080, but I think it makes things too small. So the first thing I'm going to do, now you see you have your activities menu here. There's your different desktops. You have a search menu. You have some icons pinned here. Your, oh, isn't that nice? So that's your file manager. Beautiful. Let's close it. And of course you have Firefox. This is the software manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my package manager. I'm going to make that full screen. I'm going to click on preferences. It's going to ask me for my password. And I'm going to scan down here to mirrors. Now it's set to use mirrors from worldwide. I'm going to change those mirrors to Canada. So it's only going to download software and updates from Canada. Then I'm going to hit this refresh mirror button. And it's refreshing the mirrors. It's only going to take a second. It's done. So I'm going to close that. So it's saying we have 5 packages to update. And this is the package manager. It's called PMAC, not to be confused with Pacman, the Arch Linux package manager. So I can update these. Now, you have this button here, this update button here. You can click that on. That will refresh the updates. And then you can click on apply, and it will download and install these 5 packages. Or I can cancel out of there and I can go into the terminal. And also in the terminal, the Manjaro GNOME edition have Zesh installed as their shell rather than Bash, which is something I like. And their Zesh shell is nicely themed. So you can do this. Sudo pacman, capital SYU. You can update it that way. Put in your password. and it's downloading the same type packages. And I prefer upgrading and downloading in the terminal rather than in the GUI. But it's up to you what you want to do. So now the system is updated. And you can see here this little icon has a check mark there. So that means the system is now up to date. So when you're downloading packages, you can go into the package manager, which is here. And let's just click on there and see if there's any updates. And there's not. Your system is up to date. And you can browse. These are packages you can download. Here's LibreOffice. Here's Firefox. VLC. Or you can do a search. So let's search for Brave Browser. Here's Brave Browser. And there it is there. All I got to do is click on the icon and download it. Now let's see if Htop is installed. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to open up my file manager. Let's type in Htop. When Htop is installed, wow, it's running high. Well, the GNOME desktop is known to run high. It's running on 1.11 gigs of RAM out of my 4 gigs. Let's go back into the package manager. So I'm going to click that on. And I want to see if they have Tor installed. I want to see if they have Tor web browser available in their package manager. So let's type in Tor, and there it is there. Tor browser launcher. So again, that you can download it, or you can go into the terminal and install it. So let's download it. When pending operation, hit apply. Put your password in. And it's installing the Tor web browser. It's saying it has to download all these as well. So I'm going to hit apply. And it's downloading it. So it's downloaded. So let's close that. So that GUI package manager is called PMAC, not to be confused with Pac-Man. Now let's see if Tor is there, if we can open it up. There it is right there, Tor browser. Let's open it, verifying the signature. Tor takes a long time to open. First time opening Tor, I shouldn't have opened it because it always takes a long time. So for those of you that don't know, Tor is a web browser that allows you to browse the web anonymously, and it goes through 3 different servers before you get to the end, to the website you're going to, so they can't trace back your ISP. So anyways, this is Tor web browser. So I'm going to shut this. Now I'm going to go into the terminal, and this time I'm going to install Brave Browser in the terminal. I'm going to do sudo pacman, just like you would in a pure Arch system. Capital S. Brave, and I noticed that when I was in their PMAC package manager, their Brave is spelled Brave-browser. So I'm going to put -browser in, asking me for my password, and it's installing Brave. And there, I've downloaded the Brave browser. So let's go in and open it up. So we downloaded Brave browser. Let's open it up. Let's click on this. Let's click on that. Thanks, and there we are. We're in Brave browser. This is Firefox. Opens up on the Manjaro website. Let's close that. Looks like I opened it up twice. We have layouts here. So you can change the way your desktop looks. You can make it, there's 4 here. So let's change it to traditional. Apply. Close that screen, and now we have a traditional desktop environment with your menu here. Some things pinned down here. Your update thing showing that you're up to date, your time, your volume control, and so forth. Now, let's say you want to change your wallpaper. You could go here. You go down into settings. And there's your wallpaper. You can pick on a default or a dark. Let's try this one. Let's close that. And not very nice. Anyways, this is how you would change your wallpaper. Go back to layouts. Let's just put it back to Manjaro. I think it's easier to use. So here we could go into Firewall. It's asking me for my password. There's my firewall. I'm going to click it on. So now my firewall is set. Let's go back into layouts. I think I'm going to use this one. Here you have dark mode. So also in Manjaro, you have the ability to quickly and easily change your kernel. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit on this icon here. And you're going to go into System Tools. And you're going to go into Manjaro Settings. Let's just make that large screen. And you're going to click on Kernel. And I guess I have to double click it. So these are all the kernels that are available to you in Manjaro. And you can see now we're running the Linux stable kernel 6.1.1-1. It's running and it's installed. Now, if I wanted to install one of these other kernels, for instance, it's recommended that you install the long-term support kernel, 5.15.85. What you would do is highlight it, hit install, go through the install process, and then reboot. And then afterwards, you could remove this other kernel. You could leave it in or remove it. So what's one thing that's nice about Manjaro is they offer all these kernels, like even this really old kernel. And one might ask, well, why would I want to use a really old kernel? 4.19 long-term support. And believe it or not, it's also recommended. Well, if you have an older machine with not much power in it, you might want to use an older kernel. Now, these older kernels still get security updates, but they don't get updates for newer hardware, just security updates. So if you are using an old kernel, you don't have to worry about your computer getting hacked or your computer being vulnerable because you're using a really old kernel. As long as you're using an old kernel that is still supported by your distribution and by kernel.org. So if we close this down, let's just go into Firefox for a second. And I'm going to type in kernel.org. I'm going to make it a little larger. So for instance, you can see these are the kernels that kernel.org is still supporting. And if we go back to our system settings for a second, so the oldest kernel that Manjaro is offering is 419.269. So here it is here. This one here would be the oldest kernel that Manjaro is still supporting. Let's just close that. Let's go back to system settings. So you have the ability to quickly and easily install all these kernels. So what I'm going to do now is show how you can install Awesome Window Manager and Qtile in Manjaro. One of them I'm going to install in the Package Manager, and the other one I'll install in the terminal. So let's call up the Package Manager. Let's do a search for Qtile. And here it is here. Let's click it on. Let's install it. Let's apply. Put a password in. Choose optional dependencies. I'm going to say yes. Apply. And it's installing it. I hit the wrong button. Now I'm going to go into Terminal. Let's make that large screen. I'm going to install Awesome Window Manager. Sudo pacman-s awesome. And I'm doing this the same way you would do it in a vanilla Arch. Put my password in. And there it is. Awesome is installed. Let's close the terminal. Let's log out. Whoops, wrong button. Let's log out. So you can suspend, restart, power off, or log out. Let's log out. Log out. Then I'm going to hit my name, Mensch, until it brings up the password field. Then I'm going to go down and click on this icon. And I'm going to click on Awesome. And put my password in. And we're going to log into Awesome Window Manager. Now, as you can see, we're logged into the default window, Awesome Window Manager, with their plain vanilla configuration file. So if you want, you can make your own configuration file, or you can get my configuration file from my GitLab repository, but I'm not going to download that now and install it. You can do that if you want to. You're free to do it. And so you can see there's not much in the menu here, but we could hit the mod key P, type in Firefox, and open Firefox. And there's Firefox. We can close it. And here's the workspaces up here. They're pretty small. It's hard to see. And here's the clock. Pretty small. It's hard to see because this is the default Awesome Window Manager configuration file. Let's log out. Let's quit. Let's hit my name. Click on this little icon. Let's click on Qtile. Type in my password. And so now we're in the default Qtile Window Manager. And of course, you can make your own configuration file, or you can download my configuration file from my GitLab repository, but I'm not going to do that now. And as you can see, it's black screen. There's no wallpaper. Everything small is down at the bottom. The workspaces are small. There's 9 workspaces there, but it's kind of hard to see. So if we hit the mod button and press R, spawn, we're going to type in Firefox. Let's see if it opens. And there it is. There's Firefox. The mod key W shuts it. And let's just log out of there. I'm going to shut down. And you could also hit, I believe it's the mod key and the Q to log out of there as well. So now we're going to go back into the GNOME desktop environment. So you're going to click on your name or my name until the password field comes up. Click on this little icon down here, and we're going to go back to GNOME. Then I'm going to type in the password. It's going to take a second just to load up. And now we're back in the GNOME desktop. So it's very beautiful. It's very nicely themed. And of course, if you download the new ISO from Manjaro, you can download the Cinnamon desktop as well, or any of the other desktop environments. So that's the brand new ISO from Manjaro that came out on Christmas Eve. And I downloaded it and installed it with the GNOME desktop. I gave you a brief tour of it, and I also showed you how to install Qtile and Awesome Window Manager. And I showed you how to use the Package Manager and Mac, and how to install in the terminal using Pacman. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, and I appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching. I am Linux Mensch.